I've never been a huge fan of Valentine's Day. I've always found the holiday to be kind of a drag and a waste. Kind of like New Year's Eve. At the time of this story, I was 20 years old. I worked at a small convenience store that was open 24 hours. I told them that I would work the overnight shift on Valentine's Day because I didn't have any plans. The night started just like any other night shifts I had worked in the past. Very slow and boring. So I was able to get most of my work done by about midnight. I usually spent the remainder of my shift just watching YouTube or Netflix. At about 1:30 AM, the bell rang, alerting me that someone had entered the store. He was a tall, somewhat handsome man, from what I could tell at a quick glance. I shouted, "How are you tonight, sir?" And he responded almost immediately, "Cassie, is that you?" I paused for a moment in disbelief that he recognized me. And then that's when it hit me. It was a guy named Ricky that I went to high school with. We were never really close, but always very friendly. I immediately greeted him with a hug, because that's just my personality. After a minute or two of catching up, I finally asked, "What are you doing in here so late?" He frowned slightly and said, "Well, I broke up with my girlfriend about a week ago, and honestly, I've been a bit of an insomniac lately, and just wandering around." I said I was sorry about the breakup, and asked if he needed anything. And he responded in a very genuine voice, "Honestly, it's really great to see an old friend, and if you wouldn't mind, and if you're not too busy, I would love to just sit and talk for a while." I actually thought it was kind of sweet, and I felt bad, so I told him he could hang, and we could just talk and catch up. The first 10 to 15 minutes were normal, even enjoyable. We laughed and joked about some old high school memories. After about 15 minutes, he asked to use the restroom, and of course, I let him. That is when I started to think things through a little bit. This random guy showed up in the middle of the night and just happened to immediately recognize me and strike up a conversation. I was sure it was just a coincidence, but it did seem very weird. Whilst he was in the bathroom for a minute, I decided to search him on Facebook and noticed we had some mutual friends. The first thing I noticed was that he had some weird photos. Pictures of him with knives and lots of symbology that almost looked like witchcraft or something. I don't know, I'm not much of a horror buff, but one of the pictures definitely had a pentagram in it. He came out of the bathroom, and a few moments later, and this is when things started to get really strange. I threw my phone back down and greeted him as if everything was normal. He said in a low, almost disturbing voice, "I'm so happy I got to see you again." I responded in a confused manner, "Yeah, it's great seeing you too." He slammed both hands on the counter that I sat behind and said in a now aggressive voice, "You don't understand. I'm so happy I found you. I love you, Cassie, and we are meant to be together." Going from semi-creeped out to full-on terrified, I just responded nervously, not knowing what else to say. "Thanks, Ricky, but I'm seeing someone." That of course was a lie, but I honestly didn't know what else to do. At this point, he tried to grab my arm from the other side of the counter, and I jumped back quickly. I told him he needed to leave. He took a step away from the counter and looked at me with almost lifeless eyes, and a smile that left my body paralyzed. He dropped his coat to the ground and took his shirt off. He was covered with tattoos. Really strange and creepy tattoos. Across his chest was the word "animal" in a crazy font. The rest of his torso area was covered with strange symbols. I'm not sure actually what kind of symbols. Under his left pec was my name tattooed. It literally said Cassie in cursive. He then pulled a knife out of his pocket and pointed to the tattoo of my name, while he continued his sinister smile and gaze. I know it's easy to say what you would do in this situation, but I was frozen. I felt lightheaded, like I was in a dream and couldn't wake up. I was scared if I made a move, he'd lunge at me or try to grab me again. He started to scream my name loudly. "Cassie!" I started to cry. "Cassie!" I couldn't even catch my breath, and that's when it happened. The bell from the door rang. It was a big man walking into the store. Ricky didn't even flinch. He kept his gaze fixed on me and was slowly approaching me. Once the man saw what was happening and saw me cowering in fear, he ran over and pushed Ricky down. Ricky got up and ignored the man completely and still kept his gaze on me. I I picked up my phone to call the police, and that's when Ricky finally ran and tried to jump the counter, and the man took him down again, this time holding him down until the authorities showed up. Ricky was arrested. He had a blank stare across his face the entire time. That man who saved me just happened to be a passing truck driver, wanting to grab a hot coffee. I feel like I owe him my life. I have no idea what Ricky planned on doing, but he was charged, and they used video footage from the store to help with the conviction. I'm so thankful for that truck driver, and I will never forget that evil, dead look in Ricky's eyes as he lunged for me. I still don't understand why he tattooed my name on him, or was it someone else named Cassie? Who knows? I don't work overnights anymore, and I actually moved far away from this town. I'm not sure if Ricky ever got help, or if he's still in jail. And honestly, I don't care. I just hope we never meet again. Before I continue with the final story, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to see future content from me, as well as help me in the algorithm. Thank you. The contents of this story have caused me to recently move back home with my parents, who live in another state. Last year, I was enjoying my first year of being a college grad, and living in my own house. Well, a house I rented, but I still lived alone. I was focused on my job, and wasn't really looking for a boyfriend or anything like that. Every morning, I would go down to the park, which is only about a 2-minute walk, and jog before getting ready for work. On Valentine's Day, my routine was no different. As I was finishing my jog, I was approached by a pretty handsome-looking man. He was tall, looked in shape, styled hair, and super white teeth. My creep alarm was not going off at all. He said in a calming voice, "You're very pretty. I just thought I would tell you that, and I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day." Then he just jogged off. Honestly, it kind of made me smile, because that kind of stuff doesn't usually happen to me. After all the excitement, I just continued on with my day like I would any other day. At about 1 PM, the secretary at my job told me I had a package. I thought this was very strange, considering I never got packages ever. It was a huge, beautiful bouquet of roses. There was a note on the roses that said, "To the lovely lady I saw at the park, I hope this makes you smile." Now it did make me smile, which is stupid, but I admittedly realised how weird and creepy it was. Later that night, I was cooking dinner and was going to do some work from my home computer. I thought I could hear a noise outside my window, but I just chalked it up to the wind or something. I got up a little after 8 to clean some dishes and take a break from the computer. I looked out my kitchen sink window and saw a car sat outside my house, parked in the street. Now I had no other reason to be freaked out, other than just a bad feeling. There was no parking on my street after 7 PM, and I've never seen this car before. Now again, there could have been dozens of explanations, but I just didn't feel good about the entire situation. It just felt really off. I sat back down at the computer trying to focus on my work, but I had this sickening feeling in my stomach. As I sat there in the dead silence of my room, I was sure I could hear something. I had a window that sat right next to my computer where I was sitting. I pulled back the curtain and saw the man from the park trying to break into my window. We locked eyes, and he just stared at me like a deer in headlights. He didn't have the same smile as before when we were at the park. He looked mean and aggressive. After only a couple of seconds of eye contact, which seemed like an eternity, he started to bang on the window and screamed, "Let me in!" I screamed and ran to the other room, calling the police. He must have heard me because I saw him out of the kitchen window, running to his car in front of my house. I couldn't make out the license. All I knew was that it was a white Chevy of some kind, which describes about 1 billion people. I never forgot the look in his eyes. Almost immediately, I moved home. I never stayed in that house again. I stayed at a hotel for a couple of nights, and then I drove home to my parents. I'll never forget that almost evil look he had as we locked eyes through the window, no more than inches apart. They never found the man I described, and many people think I made this story up, but I'll never forget the horror of that Valentine's Day.